What's up, everyone, and welcome to the program, the late night edition of the American Hotspur. I know. Usually it's 8 o'clock UK time, but tonight we had to make an exception for a very special guest. And of course, he brings the madness back to the Tottenham Hotspur, at least the American Tottenham Hotspur fan base. From Team Tottenham Go, it's the mad one himself, Mr. Rakdos Madness. What's going on, my friend?
Hey, man. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Yeah, you know what? I will say that that is that's the beautiful thing about the Premier League is because once you're at that stage, it's the weekend. 100%.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
So excited.
Before we get into it, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons because this channel is growing, and maybe you want to be a part of it. Maybe you don't. Either way, hit the like and subscribe buttons because it's the only thing to do. All right, so Tottenham Hotspur are coming off what I consider a very shambolic performance in the Champions League. It's like the old golf adage, right? 2 bad shots and 1 shot equals par. That's exactly what happened in the Champions League. In a 2-2 draw against their Norwegian rivals Bodo Glimt. And of course, that makes 3 straight performances where this team got off to a god-awful start, only to find themselves rebounding in the second half and figuring out a way to get a result. Now, some people will say that is the sign of a good team when things are not going well. I wouldn't necessarily go that far. I just think that the sum of the entire parts, Alan, are just not there at the moment, and that's pretty much how I would chalk this up to right now. When you think about the fact that we have 2 forward players that aren't in the 11 yet, and Dom Solanke and Rando Kolo Muani, Thomas Frank is trying to figure things out essentially without a left winger and a striker that probably doesn't necessarily fit the system in which he wants to play.
Yeah, Richie, to be honest, I don't know what style of play he fits anyway. I mean, really, unfortunately, Richie suffers from the inability to control the ball and really dribble with the ball. He can't.
Right.
He doesn't know how to move with the ball at all. In fact, he freezes when he's got the ball. He tries to make a very quick pass because I don't think he has that kind of confidence yet, and he may never have it. Overall, I think for Tottenham Hotspur, look, it starts with Thomas Frank. Thomas Frank is new to Champions League. Frank, this is the biggest team Thomas Frank has ever been the head coach of, and we were talking about it just on TTID. We were just talking about this where I think Drew mentioned it, where he's got press conferences and all kinds of meetings and stuff. I think Thomas Frank is still adjusting to life as a Tottenham Hotspur coach, at the same time trying to learn how to deal with multiple games, on the weekend and weekday, in the weekday, having multiple games during the week. So he's not able to get his practice time in. He complained about that. That I think one of the reporters in one of his interviews was talking about that. How have you found it with regards to practice? And I know he said, a lot of it, they just haven't had time to practice. So I think there's a confluence of situations, for Thomas Frank that I think he's got to reconcile with and adjust to the demand that we're going to have on any manager that's going to manage a top 6 team, one of the big 6 clubs. There's a very high level of expectation on them. And, if anything, it looks almost like he's been chewing his gum a lot harder lately. So I'm assuming he's coming under a bit of stress. The performances haven't been good enough. Let's be honest. Brighton, Wolves, and Bodo Glimt, it hasn't been. It's just been good enough to make it passable. As you kind of said, we're doing enough for par, but we shouldn't be aiming for par against Wolves. We shouldn't be aiming for par against Bodo Glimt, who we beat over 2 legs. It was
Right.
like 5-1 or something like that. We shouldn't have to deal with that. And I know they were out. A couple of their better players in the Europa League when we played. Hey,
There he is.
but even still, we should be comfortably trouncing them. I know the pitch was different. It's cold there. It's a totally different environment, and it's to their advantage, which is fine. But they're a smaller team. They need advantages like that kind of home field advantage in order to even step up to Spurs. And we just kind of played down to them. We certainly played down to Wolves, and we kind of played down to Brighton. We didn't. We're a better team than what we've been showing. I think it's there.
Right.
We have the components, as you said. Although I think we do lack some components, and I think no matter how good we're going to get, we need to upgrade on those players and find out, who can we get rid of. Like I was saying with Bentancur, maybe Bentancur would have been the right time, someone like that, to use as an example to say, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with this player. We love this guy. He's been great for us. We're going to sell you now for a profit, and we're going to find someone that's going to replace you who's even better than you. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how Real Madrid does it. That's how other big Barcelona, big clubs, Bayern Munich, that's how they do it. And I think I don't know how these owners are going to be, because even though it's the same ownership,
right.
It's the kids, and we don't know how the kids are going to handle things. So it's been 25 years since Daniel Levy, or 24 years. So it's a kind of an unknown. I expect, though, that the owners, we kind of have to have a big window, in my opinion. We have to have a big window because this is the first window where Enoch's children, or Enoch Juniors, Enoch Jr., when they're featuring in this transfer window, so they need to pony up if they're going to bat away offers, even unsolicited offers like the one they just got this last week. Even unsolicited, that was a big money offer, and that guy was going to put in like $1 billion something into the squad and give them like over almost $4 billion for everything. And that would have transformed, all of that money that's transformative money. So I think that they need to step up because they've set an expectation if the club is not for sale. They're setting a precedent and as a result, an expectation that big things should be happening, because big things would have otherwise be happening with a new owner. So without Daniel Levy, if Daniel Levy was the problem, I expect that these new owners will do something. Yeah, I realize. But this is what happens when your parents live a long time. You wind up old. It just happens.
I like that. Adrian. That was pretty funny.
But anyhow, I would expect that they would splash the cash so that they can kind of rub off the tarnish that they supposedly Daniel Levy put on, and tarnishing the team name in any way. People feeling like he didn't spend enough, wasn't willing to open up the purse strings. This will be their opportunity to kind of dispel the myth that it's Enoch, and just say, hey, it was Daniel. It was Daniel Levy saw the team a certain way, and it just it was fine while we were growing, but we're at a point now where we don't really need to grow. We're always growing. They're always growing, but they don't need to grow the squad and the stadium anymore. They've already got the stadium. They've kind of already got the foundation. to build on if they ever want to expand into NFL or NBA or whatever. Which I'd be totally cool with. That'd be awesome if we had like a Spurs equivalent NFL team. I think that would be cool as hell.
That would be cool. The the Tottenham Hotspur NFL squad, that would be actually pretty cool.
You could go
the interesting thing is, when it comes to something like the Champions League, right? That is your showcase. The league is the league, right? But the Champions League is an opportunity to put the cockerel on a global stage. Everybody watches the Champions League, right? It is I consider the Champions League the bread and butter of your marketing arm. If you're in the Champions League, you're being watched across the globe, which is why, generally speaking, most teams usually play. I would probably assume their first choice squad when it comes to the Champions League. And it looked like Thomas Frank wasn't necessarily doing that against Bodo Glimt, which is fine because it's Bodo Glimt. And this is not an indictment on Bodo Glimt, because they are a very good Norwegian side. But again, let me rephrase that. They're a Norwegian side. The Norwegian Allsvenska, I think that's what they call it. That's their league, the Allsvenska.
Oh, anyway, it's something like that.
Yeah. It's not even on the same par. Not even like, we're essentially not even playing the same sport. They're like, the discrepancy between the Premier League and the Norwegian top flight. Like if you were going to say like maybe League One or the Championship, okay, fine. Like maybe that might be a fair equivalent, right? Even with a rotated squad, Spurs never should have put themselves in a position where they had to come back from behind.
Yeah.
And in that first half, it was so shambolic that they would essentially, for the first 30 minutes, they were pinned. They were pinned back in their own. They're essentially pinned back in their own end, and we're essentially allowing Bodo Glimt to battle.
Yeah, I didn't understand.
And it was so shambolic to the point where it's like at this stage, like, to me, it's not even Thomas Frank. Like Thomas Frank, like I would never assume that he's setting his team up to lose or setting his team up for a draw, right? I would probably assume that he looked at it and said, well, you know what, there's going to be some mismatches here, and we're going to find our way forward, and we're going to end up with 3 points. And it just didn't work out that way. At the very end of that, you actually have to ask yourself, well, wait a second. Thomas Frank is the type of guy that wants to have possession. He actually, the way that he wants to play is he wants to be organized and come back and organized and compact in the back, not concede goals. But he also wants, like in the buildup or even on the counter, he wants to hold possession. More possession, in theory, should lead to more opportunities and more chances on net. And I think in that first half, they didn't even manage a shot on net.
I don't know.
First half.
Right.
Right.
Not at all.
And it begs the question of whether or not this team is actually built and set up for Thomas Frank to be able to do what Thomas Frank likes to do best. I mentioned at the top of the show, because one of the things that I think was one of the interesting things was, I think Spurs thought that they were going to be, I guess you could say, mirrored in the likeness of a team like Brentford, being able to score within the first 5 minutes, set the tone early. And either put themselves in a position where at worst they get a draw, but with the talents we supposedly have, it's going to lead to 3 points more often than not, and it just hasn't necessarily played out that way. And what's even more disconcerting is the fact that this is like a soft portion of the schedule. September through October, when you looked at it, there wasn't really a lot of big thumpers in the Premier League in this portion. It's Leeds. It's Bournemouth, it's Wolves, and it's like we're not getting 3, we're getting 1.
Yeah,
and it's like we're not looking good getting the 1.
No, you're right. There is there are deficiencies in the squad for sure, and I think we know them, and some of them aren't necessarily deficiencies. There are just some people like to soup up their cars. They put nitro in because the car doesn't standard go fast enough. And they're just players. There are players that are just standard fast, and then, or that they're non-nitro players, and then you got players that are on nitro, and the nitrous oxide, they like
Yep.
Bentancur example as a Bentancur, or gosh, if I had, or Rich Arlison. I mean, Yves Bissouma, when he played, let's take his attitude and his off-pitch problems aside. His play style at times was really good when he wanted to play. When he was ready to play, he was pretty good. We need to replace someone like that, him with someone like that at the minimum. I would get like maybe like a Luis Paqueta or there are certain players that I would like to have, like a Bruno Guimaraes from Newcastle. Guimaraes,
yeah.
But he's never he's not leaving unless, I mean, he might leave, but every player's has a price.
Sure.
But I think there are improvements that can be made even on players where there's nothing wrong with them. Richarlison, I think, is someone that we definitely have to improve on, needs to move on. To be honest, Dominic Solanke is another one that I think he's a good player. He's a stair step to a better player.
How dare you?
I still, I
like Dom.
I know, and see, but that's the thing. I like Dominic Solanke too. I like him. I liked him when he was at Bournemouth. And I was like, yes. Yes, for sure.
Adrian's on fire in the chat right now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because I think about it, right? And Thomas Frank inherited a squad that he didn't build, and a lot of these players were brought in to perform in a tactical system of a former regime, right? Like our goalkeeper, Vicario. Thomas Frank didn't bring in Vicario. He was designed to play in a back three. And I believe he was, I believe he came in when Conte was still in. Same thing with Pedro Porro. Same thing with both VDV and Romero. Same thing with Destiny Udogie. When you look at the midfield, Polina was definitely brought in for Thomas Frank, and that's paid dividends. But you mentioned Rodrigo Betancourt, and now Betancourt is going to get an extension. And I know that I think you mentioned earlier tonight that you think that might have been a misstep, just considering that that should be an area of the pitch that we should definitely improve on. Yeah. And I can definitely agree with that. But when you look at James Maddison was brought in for Ange. You look at Richarlison, who was brought in way back when to be play second fiddle to a dude like Harry Kane. And the interesting thing is, like, if we were a team that had like 30 to 45% possession, and we were truly a counterattacking team where we employed a mid block, and then we got quick turnovers and played the ball forward onto a dude like Richarlison, that's the type of striker he is in those type of systems. Like if he was in Bournemouth right now, or if he was at Everton under David Moyes, like he would actually be a very good player because he fits a specific style of play. And when I look at this team, I'm thinking to myself, well, he inherited a team that plays a completely different style of football to which that with Thomas Frank. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't necessarily think that we're going to be as bad as we were last year, because we're going to be in every single game, because defensively we're going to be tough to break down.
Yeah.
But that being said, like, it's going to take multiple transfer windows for Thomas Frank to be able to build a team, that suits his style of play. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this team is going to be capable of treading water.
I mean, I think that, look, we're able to tread water, at least. What I will say, if I'm going to look glass half full, we've been tying games that we probably should have lost, which is, the bucket. I love it. We've been tying games that we definitely should have lost. Look, Bodo Glimt should have beat us. Wolves should have beat us. Arguably, Brighton should have beat us. So there are in the Bournemouth game, we didn't play very well, but we only lost 1-0. So we've been more than treading water. It's just that it feels like the starter is not turning over. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing right now. You can see the growing pains on the pitch because of how they're passing, kind of playing, and it's a new style. You can see Vicario's not that comfortable kicking the ball away, so he tends to play out from the back, which is old Ange style, and no one wants to see that. The moment we saw Kinski kick a ball, we were like, oh, goalies can kick balls for for distance? No way. And because Vicario certainly.
And it almost felt like it was in slow mo, like you're watching like a highlight package, and his hair is all flowing as he's kicking. He's
like the cool guy. Yeah, the cool guy. Something that we've never seen before. And and so unfortunately he's just not gifted with distribution. He's just terrible at it. So the Vicario is another player you mentioned. I think we can improve upon. Mm-hmm. He started out very strong, but we quickly recognized his deficiencies. Now, I don't know that it's hard to tell. He worked on set pieces, we're told, even during Ange. If it's to be believed that he worked on it, I guess he's a little bit better, but he's still not good. He's a good shot stopper. We had a good shot stopper in Lloris. Right. They're very similar types of goalies. They really are. Lloris was crap also with distribution. He couldn't distribute if it saved his life. He was terrible at it. And Vicario is just as terrible. I feel like we've got Lloris Jr. here with as it's turning out to be.
We got Lloris Light.
Lloris Light, yeah. Again, what is with this? Everybody's drinking light here, or diet. We got Richarlison, the diet Brazilian. We got Vicario, kind of the diet Lloris. Solanke, the diet Harry Kane.
The diet Brazilian. I love that. Yeah, but it's interesting though, because I guess in some ways you're absolutely right. Maybe we are treading water, but my biggest fear is that we're going to end up having more of those stumbling blocks like we saw against Bournemouth than not, right? I think you mentioned the term playing down to your opponent.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that was the holdover mentality of Ange Postecoglou, right? Where the mentality is like it's okay to lose. Like losing is just a part of the game, that type of thing. Really, when the expectation levels are you're supposed to be showing up every single weekend, and this is an opportunity to put 3 points up on the board and not let this one slip, right? And that's what has Leeds, as far as I'm concerned, that's what has Leeds me a little concerned, right? Because Leeds, say what you will about the last couple of years when it came to newly promoted teams, and they've been absolutely, god awful. But that being said, this year it feels like it's a little bit different. Leeds and specifically Leeds and Sunderland look like they have what it takes to step up, and of course they shook the, they with the opposite of what the last couple of years of newly promoted teams tried to do, which is being a little bit more finesse, trying to play a high possession game, playing out of the back. And of course, they didn't necessarily have the talent in order to pull that off. Leeds went for size. They went for physicality. They went for a little bit more of a counter-attacking style where they themselves are also organized and compact, right? They are the opportunity. They are the team that will take advantage of mistakes in the midfield, right? And that right now is kind of our big issue right now, where for whatever reason, it seems like we're trying to juggle a midfield three, trying to find the right balance in the midfield. Sometimes it looks good. Sometimes it looks like what it looked like against Bodo Glimt. Yeah, and we saw exactly what Bodo Glimt was able to do when we made mistakes. Like if a Norwegian team can literally slice us apart on the counterattack, it has me worried about what Leeds is going to be able to, what Leeds is going to be able to do. And by the way, I'm not a big fan of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but that being said, it's like he's their number 9. It's like you're wondering whether or not like he's going to have opportunities to score a goal tomorrow.
I forgot DCL is on Leeds now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, Thomas Frank, from what I can tell, it looks like Thomas Frank is learning as he's going. So he's And yeah, I totally. And again, to really
You're
quick
right.
revisit Vicario,
He's
I'm
right.
not saying he's a bad goalie. I'm just saying we can improve upon him. But as far as um, unspecific to our leads, Thomas Frank is learning on the go, so
Right.
he's trying to figure out what's the nice mix. And really, it shouldn't just be like the perfect mix. It should be the mixes that work well together, because he's going to have Champions League and he's got Premier League and he's got all the cup games. So, and he's going to have so many different variations of what is good. He just, I think right now he needs to not rotate so much in Champions League, because those teams will punish us if
Right.
he's got the wrong mix that he's trying for the first time. It's not the place to Champions League is definitely not the place to start experimenting with your mix of, of structure or squad or anything like that. Don't play at the Champions League. I'd rather him play in the cup games. And if they need more practice time, they really need to figure out a way. Other teams are able to do it. Maybe we need to figure out, how does Real Madrid make all the time to practice with all of these huge egos and everything? How do they manage it? And still able to make top of the league and still make it all the way to the end of the Champions League. I just use it. I have no skin in the game with Real Madrid. I don't have any love for them. I just use them, or Bayern Munich. I much like Bayern Munich. And how do they do it? Again, they churn and burn. They keep upgrading. They keep changing it up, and they expect the coach is able to keep up.
Yeah, like how does Crystal Palace do it? How do they rotate between cup games and their European schedule, and still still able to look absolutely dynamite in the Premier League?
Yeah, how did they lose?
Yeah.
They lost Connor. What's his name? The guy.
They lost Elise last year, and now they lost Eze.
Yeah, they've lost a lot of talent, and yet they still have found a way. So but these people must, like Mateta and Sarr and some of them, that I'm sure that they were in the wings, they were scouted, and they were ready. They just needed the opportunity for people like Michael Elise and Ebercheze to kind of move on to greener pastures and get a chance. But we don't have. We have some of that. We do. But they're so young. You know what I mean? Right. They're not ready yet to step up. And that's I could write a tragedy of the tragedy of Matisse Tell. He's he's an unfortunate player because, well, he's not an unfortunate player. His situation is unfortunate because had he just been purchased at the same time that we purchased Odebear, right. And for a song compared to 35 million pounds, there wouldn't be any expectation on Matisse Tell, and people would give him probably that time to mature. But because he was brought in at a time when we definitely should have had someone with a lot more experience, preferably Premier League experience, someone that could hit the ground running, right. And someone that is worth 35 million pounds. And I just don't think Matisse Tell as a player is worth 35 million pounds. And so he was set up to fail, and I think he's just, unfortunately, he's failing. And right. And I'm worried that players like Matisse Tell, who we've invested in, we're going to play them at the wrong time, and it'll cost us, and it'll ruin his motivation and ruin any kind of confidence he may have, because again, unreasonable expectations on someone. It's kind of like when I had when you have children and they're little and you want to take them everywhere, and then you get mad when they start to cry or they get tired or whatever. But that's an unreasonable expectation on the child. You can't expect more of them than they can give. You can't expect 35 million pounds worth of performance out of Matisse Tell. You just shouldn't. It's not fair to him. It's not right.
Well, in that same vein, right? it's weird because Archie Gray was a $40 million player.
Yeah.
And yet there's different expectations on a guy like Archie Gray. Now, granted, he's not a goal scorer, right? So I think that's where the line really is, right? Because Matisse Tell, essentially a Bayern Munich understudy at the at the 9, had some pretty decent success with Bayern Munich. But that being said, I think you're absolutely right. But that being said, I also look at Matisse Tell's player profile and I wonder what is the big attraction? Because again, when you look at the striker position and how Thomas Frank wants to use the striker, it almost feels like they got essentially the understudy for Richarlison.
Yes, for sure. Which is weird, because Richarlison really is the understudy, and yet we've got an understudy to the understudy. To bring it back, you mentioned deficient. That the squad is not. Thomas Frank is working with a car that has some, leaky gaskets and some other issues that we need to work through. The car runs, but it needs work. And I think that's kind of where Tottenham is at. The car runs, the engine runs, but it needs work. And there are certain positions, saying the center forward, the goalie, throw my boy Tell in. The left wing, their position, and there are positions that we don't really have a great player for, and can be definitely. And then when coupled with players that probably could be moved on, or players that need more challenge, like Destiny needs someone that on the left side that can challenge him. It'll make him better. It'll drive him to higher heights, and it'll be good for whoever it is that they bring in. We need to replace Richarlison. We need to give Dominic Solanke someone that can really challenge him and get him to improve. When I say improve, I mean to reach the high heights that we have expectation of him.
You would expect that might be Randall Kolo Muani, yes.
Yes. He obviously someone. I feel like either he was shot in the leg or something, but this dead leg is taken for. It's way longer than dead legs should take. Maybe I don't on our medical staff that they can't heal a dead leg.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing, right? Because I come from the old school where it's like, rub a little dirt on it, get back out there, right? It's a dead leg. I've had multiple dead legs before, even dead legs that left a bruise. And what was interesting about it is I was still able to run. Granted, I'm not a professional soccer player, so I wouldn't necessarily know the intricacies of coming back from a dead leg. But that being said, there is a thing of like coddling your players a little too much, right? But that being said, the idea that Randall Kolo Muani is on this team does open up a lot of interesting opportunities, right? And I would probably agree with you that yes, that might be the guy that would challenge Dominic Solanke, but it still doesn't necessarily fill the void on the left-hand side, right? Because as of right now, that's kind of being manned by Xavi, but I think everybody understands exactly what Xavi's role is going to be with this team moving forward, right? Everybody just assumes that he's going to be at the 10, and I would probably concur with that. But that being said, my biggest worry is that even with Solanke and Kolo Muani in the fold and healthy, it still doesn't answer that question. And we're still going to be talking about this midfield three, because it sounds like Thomas Frank is probably going to continue to roll with a dude like Xavi on the left side at least until January. Yeah.
I mean, I think they wanted Xavi because he is, and it seems to be a Spurs trait about us. We like our players to be malleable in whatever position we want that we want to be able to move them to wherever we want to move them and expect that we can get something out of them. We did it to Archie Gray. I mean, way back in the day, we did it to Eric Dyer. I mean, we move people all over the place where they're not technically starting, and kind of expect them to give us a performance. But so I think with Xavi, we expected him to be able to play on the left and then kind of, as you said, move into the 10. And then if and when Madison does come back, they'll challenge each other. I think James Madison will be a great influence on Xavi, because I think there's a guile that James Madison brings that I don't think younger players, and not that James Madison's all that old. I think he's 28.
27, 28. Yeah, somewhere around there.
Something like that. But he's got there's a certain guile that only experience teaches you, and he's got that. Whereas I think Xavi's just kind of like very good with his body movement and whatnot. But he doesn't have that sneakiness yet. And I think that would be kind of cool to watch. I've been watching Xavi play, and he's very technically amazing. Probably all his life has been told he's been amazing. He's a good-looking guy, super athletic, and he reached the top, so I'm sure all his life has been told he's been wonderful. But, I wonder what mental resiliency he has dealing with a situation like now where, hey, he's not the big man anymore. He's not the top of the totem pole. He's kind of having to learn, oh man, the Premier League is no joke. They hit harder. They go faster. They kick harder. And I think so far I've been sort of unimpressed with him for 60. What do we pay 68 million for him?
59 plus add-ons. Yeah. 58 plus add-ons.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't seen that player yet. I'm waiting to see that version of Xavi playing for us. Right now, he's sort of on the same level as, Odebear and Tell. He hasn't really blown it away. He's, it feels more like he's floundering. And at times, you could see he looks frustrated. He actually looks frustrated. And I'm wondering if I don't know him as a player. I know he played at RB Leipzig Red Bull Leipzig. He played at RB.
Yeah.
But I don't remember or know what his mental strength is. Is he mentally super strong, or is he just used to everything being easy and kind of, is he going to be the player that throws fits or gets upset and kind of brings himself down? I remember kids like that when growing up. You always had that one kid that on the team that couldn't control their emotions, especially the ones that were always told that they're wonderful, parents that coddled them and whatnot.
Sure. I don't know, because there's been a couple occasions where, where Xavi's rotated, but he ended up coming in the second half right at the 55, 60 minute mark. Coming into the 10, and all of a sudden it literally changed the entire dynamic, right? But there was also like the match against Bodo Glimt, really, like when he actually came on, we looked like a different attacking team. But I can understand where the frustration comes in, because the only guy that's really in that attacking three that actually gives this team anything is Mohamed Kudus on the right, and considering the way that the way that Kudus is played on the right hand side doesn't necessarily leave a lot. I guess you can say as like doesn't leave a lot for inverted runs coming into the central part of the area. He's usually right outside the box on the right hand side.
Yeah.
Right. So from that standpoint, you're trying to pinpoint a target into the box, and it's generally Richarlison. Richarlison outside of that match against Burnley to start the season. Where you can understand, because it's Burnley. For the most part, he's been manhandled in the box, right? So it's hard to get balls in the box, and you can understand from that standpoint. If you know for a fact that you don't have a striker that's reliable, you're going to be trying to do things on your own. Whether taking a guy 1v1, trying to put a shot in, and for the most part, most of the shots that he has been trying to get on net aren't necessarily on target, right? So I can understand a little level of frustration, but I would probably assume that, once we get Solanke back, once we can get maybe a Randall Colomwani, where depending on how Frank wants to align it with, maybe Colomwani is going to be on the left, Solanke through the middle, and maybe that, maybe with Xavi training and knowing he's coming into matches playing in a specific location, a specific position on the pitch, and not necessarily playing on the left-hand side, maybe that might even out and we're actually going to see Xavi come good. But I do want to switch gears to Leeds, because we got about 10-ish minutes left. And I do want to talk a little bit about this because we are coming into another, a FIFA break. This team is notoriously not good at getting 3 points heading into an international window. Leeds is not your typical promotion team. They're actually not bad at all. I think right now they have, 8 points right now. Let me pull this up real quick.
They're a strong, they're a strong home team.
They're on 8 points right now, tied with Fulham, Brighton, Everton, and Chelsea on 8 points. Yes, they're very good at Ellen Road. And of course, that's an environment that can get quite crazy in itself. But that being said, they're a team that decided to go get away from the finesse. I guess you can say it's the Arteta ball or the Pep ball, where you're playing from behind, you're playing out of the back. You're dealing with a lot of high possession. That it worked in the championship because quite frankly, it's the championship, right? And they had the best players for that division to being able to execute that style of play. But now they've gotten away with it. They're a lot taller. They're a lot more physical. They're a lot more organized and compact out of the back. And they can also use their speed to get forward on the counter, right? That's what has me worried about this, because if Thomas Frank doesn't get the midfield three right tomorrow, you're going to see a lot of turnovers in the middle of the park. And that's where my concern comes in, because I know that Leeds can get forward in a hurry.
No, you're right. I think I'm also concerned. I was concerned when we played against Wolves. I mentioned that I was like, look, I'm worried that we're going to take for granted the fact that they're at the bottom of the table, and we're going to play down to them, and suddenly it's going to be a tough game. I thought it was going to be a 1-0 win. It wound up a 1-1 draw. It was, and I'm worried that, looking kind of macro, I'm worried because Thomas Frank has shown that right now he's still figuring out the mix of players to who to play for during the Premier League games, who to save for the Champions League. And and then we're going to have cup games. We've got Carabao Cup, and at some point we'll have FA Cup. So kind of on the map, if I look at take way back and look macro, I'm worried because Thomas Frank is still not sure and he's still figuring things out, and the players are still trying to figure each other out. But looking at the game again, just like my concern with Wolves, I'm worried that we're going to take for granted the fact that they were a championship club last year. They won it, but they were a championship side. And, we really, on paper, we should be destroying them. We really should. I think I think they beat Leeds 5-0.
4-0.
Was it 4-0?
Yeah. But let's be honest, right? Arsenal's attacking three is night and day.
Oh, night and
devastating.
Day. Sure.
Night and day, right? So that's not for as far as and I think that was their first match of the season too.
Might have been. Yeah. It might have been. But even still, they can be gotten at. I'm just worried that Spurs are going to look and go, well, Arsenal did it. They look how many they scored past them and stuff. We should be able to keep up with them. We beat Arsenal in 1-0 in preseason, so we should be able to take any team that Arsenal can beat. But I hope that's not the case. We have a brand new leadership group, whether I like the idea of a leadership group or not. And I'm a little confused by some of the choices, but it's a lot of people, actually. I never really thought there'd be so many people in a leadership group. We didn't talk about that tonight, the leadership group. We should probably mention that.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Well, in the time I've got, yeah. I get why Ben Davies is in it. I just don't know why Vicario's in it. I think it should be a captain and a vice captain at most, and we're done.
I agree.
I don't know why we need to have other people for the feel good.
My issue with leadership groups is that accountability goes out the door. Because I would probably assume within a leadership group, you're talking about a clique of 3 to 5 players that are, essentially good friends, not only on the pitch but also off the pitch, right?
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, there's going to be, potentially a sense of entitlement where their bad play can't be questioned because they're in the leadership group, right? So there might be, like, to me, I don't like the idea of leadership groups. I think it breeds complacency and a little bit of entitlement, right? Where the interesting thing is, back in the day when captains were announced, it usually was pulled within the squad with the player that commands the most respect in the dressing room. Yep. And that was your captain.
Yeah. In all sports, that's the only way I've ever known it. Is just who's got the most respect, who's the one that works the hardest. That's the one we want as our captain. So I don't know. Again, I feel like it's a miss on this leadership group, and I'm not questioning Thomas Frank. I would question any manager. It's not Thomas Frank. I just want a manager that wins. I don't care who it is. I just want a manager that can help create a group that can win, that can challenge for Premier League titles. I don't care who it is. That I just want that. Whoever that is, that's who we need to bring in. If it's not Thomas Frank, get rid of him. If it is Thomas Frank, perfect.
Right. I just think the interesting thing about it is that, with Thomas Frank, for me at least, I don't know how you feel about this, but over the last couple of years, we've been sold a project that there was going to be turnover. There's going to be a new squad. Over the course of transfer windows, we're gonna bring in young players. We're gonna develop a squad, and this is going to be a squad that's potentially going to challenge for Premier Leagues for years to come. The reality was that when Thomas Frank in through the door, I initially I thought maybe this might be the guy who is going to put the finishing touches on this project, but it's looking like it might be the start of a new project, right? Because Thomas Frank is going to have a different player. It's going to have a different player profile. And my biggest worry is that fans are going to have an expectation that Thomas Frank needs to win silverware within his first season, definitely within the first 2. And I'm thinking to myself, well, man, here's the thing. There's probably going to be players that he's going to retain because they fit his profile, profile of the players that he's looking for. But there's probably, it's probably going to take a couple windows really to get the type of player that he prefers. Which means there's going to be outgoings. And my biggest worry here is that the same thing that happened last year with Ange, where there's going to be a string of matches where either we're not playing our best or it looks like the team isn't trying hard, and then all of a sudden the toxicity of what we saw last year with Ange comes out for Thomas Frank. And then all of a sudden, maybe we're going to start talking in 18 months that we're going to have to start replacing the manager again. And the cycle will continue, right? I'll just say this, right? That eventually we're going to have to give somebody an opportunity to have at least 3 to 5 years within the club. Results, don't get me wrong, results have to be there. But that being said, it's like, when you start looking around at some of the, the teams in the world that have the most success, there is a trend between them all, is that their head coaches are there between 3 to 5 years. They're allowed time to build, and they're allowed time to really change the atmosphere and the chemistry within the club, right?
Yeah.
and do it right. And for me, I like Thomas Frank, and I think Thomas Frank has the potential to be that guy. But I just think, I just hope that the expectations of the fans match the expectations of the club, and understand that this is going to take at least a year and a half, really, with the transfer windows. And of course, if Enoch Jr. Comes good with the promises of ambition, then this thing is not going to take as long as it would have if we had retained Ange.
Yeah. No, you're right. I see that. Look, again, we kind of live in exciting times because this is the first window post Daniel Levy. We don't,
Right.
There's a whole host of the fan base that hasn't been alive to see that happen. So they're curious, and we're all curious to see what's going to happen post Daniel Levy. Hopefully, we can start to get better communication. I think Daniel Levy maybe kept some of the communication distant from the fans. Maybe this ownership group will be a little more transparent. But I have good faith in the squad. I think with all that being said, again, I think it's going to be a 2-1 win to Tottenham.
All right, 2-1 tomorrow. Who scores the goals? I
think it's going to be Romero, and I think it's going to be. I'm hoping for Kudus with his first. He came very close against Buda Glimt. In fact, didn't he put one in and they took it back, or was that against Wolves? I don't remember.
No. Yeah, we had a goal disallowed against Bodo Glimt, and I thought it was.
Was it Bentancur?
Yeah, I think it might have been Bentancur.
Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, as I mentioned on the on Spurs Diehards TTID, and I think really for the most part, until I actually see this attack and this team start on the front foot and actually, I guess you can say, play with intention within the first 25 minutes, and really essentially put a team to the sword in the first half, I'm going to err on the side of caution. For some reason, I'm just a little bit worried that this team is just not a fast starter yet. So I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw, which is better than a loss heading into a international window, right? You know the old adage, right? You can't run before you learn how to walk, and you can't walk until you learn how to crawl. So me personally, I think that's what the process is right now. And I still believe that Thomas Frank doesn't know exactly what his best 11 is yet.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that has to do with some of those injuries. But before we go, what is the plan for Team Tottenham Go?
Well, work has been very busy, but I've been starting to carve out time to do match reactions, and I'm hoping to at some point get to do pre-match predictions as well as match reactions, and then try to get back into it. But work has been busy.
Yeah, I hear you. Just to let everybody know that tomorrow, obviously, it is the Hotspur Watch Along, which begins at 7:30 Eastern here in the United States. And then, of course, we hit the international break, and here on Stateside Footy, we're going to have all the lead up into the first friendly against Ecuador. And of course, both of those matches, Ecuador and Australia, will be live streamed here on Stateside Footy. And of course, we will have guests lined up for before and after the window, so we can recap everything. And hopefully, this is a great window for Mauricio Pochettino, because quite frankly, the national team needs a nice little extended winning streak before we hit World Cup 2026. So all of that will be here on Stateside Footy. Real quick, Alan, what did you think of the October roster?
Of the which roster? The
U.S. men's national team. October
the U.S. men's national team. I don't know that
I love it.
I don't know. I got a feeling Pochettino is in he's in a bad spot, and there's a lot of expectations on him. I think we all
Sure.
had expectations on him, and just hasn't really delivered. Pulisic and I don't think they get along.
I would
Pochettino and
agree.
Pulisic.
I would agree.
And you know, it's not good when the coach is antagonistic with the probably arguably your best player. It makes me a little concerned.
I don't think they don't get along for the reasons that I think everybody thinks that what's going on, right? Pochettino took away the power from the players. I think the players got comfortable under Greg Berhalter and treated Windows like like a summer camp, right, where they can come and go as they please. And I think Pulisic got comfortable.
Yeah.
And Pochettino said, "Screw all that." So that's going to do it for us. You got to go, and I got to go as well too. And so tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to be talking about a Tottenham win over Leeds. Until then, guys, enjoy your evening, and come on, you Spurs!
Come on, you Spurs!